Hi, all. Welcome to Royally Unfiltered, the show that takes you behind palace gates like never before. This week, helping me tackle all the biggest headlines is world-renowned royal authors Hugo Vickers and Robert Jobson. Thank you so much for being here. Hugo, I know that you've had a busy week because I spent part of it with you. So thank you so much for being here. And Robert, I'm sure you've been in the midst of the royal chaos too. This is such an exciting week for royal watchers, isn't it?
Yeah, I was at Ascot yesterday. It was a bit disappointing, really, when Katherine didn't turn up at the last minute. But of course, they printed that she was in the procession, which probably was the error, because obviously everyone had been told that she was coming. So that was a bit of a disappointment. But it was a great day, and I managed to win some money, so I was quite happy.
Oh, how much money did you win?
Well, a few hundred. Yeah, it was quite good.
Wow, what a
Yeah.
good day for you, Hugo. Did you win anything when you were at Ascot?
No, I didn't. I lost twice, but then I have a habit of backing outsiders, and there's a very good reason why outsiders don't win, but it's rather fun when they occasionally do.
No,
Each
it's true.
each way bet, Hugo. I got 100 to 1 each way
E-
bet. In the
That's much
second
better.
person,
Yeah,
that was a
I
hundred to
bet,
one. Yeah.
I bet on reaching high, which was the king's horse, but it didn't reach high enough, I'm afraid.
It didn't.
Well, let's jump into Ascot stories really quickly. We will talk about Catherine, the Princess of Wales, but I thought that this was a really cute story. We are at the end of Royal Ascot. This is a week-long celebration of horse racing, and this year, I didn't realize this until yesterday, but it marks a major milestone, the 200th anniversary of the Royal Procession. And to commemorate the occasion, King Charles III and Queen Camilla, they introduced a first ever addition to the racecourse, the Queen's Reading Room installation. What a great idea. In a statement from the King and Queen, it said this year, the Queen's Reading Room will be present at Royal Ascot for the first time, and we do hope that the installation will be of interest to those who visit, and that the delight of reading might even serve to enhance the pleasures of riding. Hugo, this is a great collaboration because not only does Queen Camilla love horses, she is also so great when it comes to introducing us to new literature and authors.
And she had a couple of authors in the carriage procession, William Boyd and Robert Harris. That's kind of an interesting development. And so, yeah, I think it's a good idea to sort of try and mix sport and literature. I think, you never know who you're going to draw in from each side. I think that's fascinating. And I'm sure it was a great success. I wasn't there yesterday, so I didn't see it, but I'm all for it.
And Robert, do you think that this was the Queen's idea? I mean, I thought that this was so unique.
Yeah, I'm sure it was the Queen's idea. I'm not sure how much reading will be done, apart from reading of the race card on the day. But it's a great idea. It catapults the whole subject up into the narrative. I mean, I've been on many a visit with her when she has been to prisons actually, where I mean, literacy and people not being able to read is a huge problem amongst criminal fraternity and people that have been in prison. So she's really been trying very hard to improve literacy in amongst prisoners to help them once they've have come out of prison to get work and to actually just live in the world that we live. Can you imagine how difficult it is if you can't read and write? So she's been doing an awful lot of work, and I know she's going to be honoured soon for that work in the city. But the reality is, I do think that she's thinking they're both the king and the queen are thinking outside of the box. They're trying to sort of add things to, to make events like Royal Ascot more their own. Of course, we're so used to the way it was done with Her late Majesty Elizabeth II, and I think it's good to just change things up a little bit.
Hugo, we've seen such a transition when it comes to Queen Camilla's. I hate to use the word brand because it feels so, it feels so corporate. But we love Queen Camilla now. Is one of the reasons that we have fallen in love with her, aside from the fact that she's such an incredible support to King Charles, actually seeing her pursue her passions like reading, like horses, domestic violence, even seeing some of the things she truly cares about has, softened her to a lot of us.
But I think that's right. And I think also, it's always very important that members of the royal family support things which they are really deeply committed to. And she's very committed to all these things. Otherwise, it rings a little bit false. But
Yeah.
in this particular case, she's done all these things. It's quite interesting because before she married the king, she really didn't do anything at all. She was known for being, shall I say, slightly laid back about life. So and suddenly at this sort of slightly advanced age, here she is promoting all these things and doing a really good job. It's fascinating.
It is. It's like she's next in line after the Princess Royal almost as one of the hardest working royals. And it's been incredible to see the way she loves and supports the king throughout, I imagine a very difficult time. Speaking of which, around this time last year, I couldn't wait to see the king at Ascot because we had found out last year that both him and the Princess of Wales were dealing with cancer. Um, this year, unfortunately, Robert, you said that it was a mistake in the printing. I've heard that
No,
version
no,
as well.
no, no,
That
no. I mean, I don't know if it was a mistake in the print. I
okay,
think it was a mistake to have. I think if there was any doubt whatsoever, then they would have not printed it. I mean, the
mm,
fact is that she was obviously listed to go. I'm sure there have been a slight irritation that she wasn't. I mean, at the end of the day, this is the leading royal lady in the group. It's a wonderful occasion in terms of fashion, of celebrating Britain, and she would have been a star there. And it was a shame that she wasn't there. I think a lot of people would have been disappointed. Simply, what would she be wearing? But we have to balance that with the way she is. She has been recovering up from a diagnosis, and if she didn't feel up to it, she didn't feel up to it. But I'm sure there'll been a bit of disappointment, even in the royal party.
yeah, so Hugo, the Princess of Wales, Catherine, pulls out of Ascot this week. That's what we're referencing. And I've heard one version, which is that it was a mistake. Robert saying absolutely not. That would be such a terrible error
They
for
definitely
somebody to
told us
make.
she was coming. I mean, the
Yeah.
palace advised the journalists that both the Prince and
Okay.
Princess of Wales would be there. There's no
Okay.
doubt she would have been there. Yeah.
That's good
She
to
was
know.
due to be
Uh,
there.
and Hugo, the other what we've also heard from the palace, or what we've heard from the palace, is that the princess is just trying to navigate and figure out what this new schedule is going to be as she recovers from cancer. We were told that we should expect this gradual return to work. I think we've been so lucky to see her as much as we have this year. What was your reaction to her not being at Ascot?
Well, two things really. I mean, first of all, she'd been to the trooping, which is quite a long morning. The Garter ceremony is also quite a long day. Those two things may well have taken their toll. And Ascot itself, I imagine, I'd never come in the carriage, but I imagine even if you come by carriage, it's still pretty tiring. I mean, it's a long, tiring day. And I think it's completely understandable that if anything should be dropped, is the one that should be dropped. It's always a pity when things are done at the last minute. And I mean, I think it's right. I mean, she has said before that she's not out of the woods. And I think this is an example, actually, which we must take seriously, that she isn't. It's still going on. It's not going to, she's not completely better. And perhaps she never will be, So, perhaps she'll always have to be a bit careful about what she does. She does have her priority of being the children, of course, and the school runs and things that she does. And she's spent a lot of time with them, which I entirely commend. And I think if anything she had to drop out of, that was the one to drop out of. But of course it's disappointing. And especially if it's done at the last minute, sort of shock headlines and all that.
Robert, do you have a reaction to that? Because that's my concern that obviously there was a lot of thought put into this because there's no question that uh, the reaction is all of these headlines that we're seeing now. And people like us are trying to
Kinsey, the
dismiss.
headlines are inevitable. I mean, if you're listed in the program, your advisors are telling the press the day before that she's gonna be there, that her mother's there that day, and that they don't give a full explanation as to what it is, rather than it's a reaction, which I understand that Hugo's totally right in saying what he said. But I think that if you're going to give that advice ahead the day before from the palace that they're going to be there, then you sort of need to be there. The reality is the king himself is a trooper. He's carrying on. He's doing every single day of Royal Ascot. He knows how important it is not only to his race course but to the people that are there, and it wants to avoid such headlines. So you had headlines which were in a way negative because she didn't turn up. if they hadn't put the whole thing into the whole, if they hadn't released everything earlier and advised the media that she was coming, no one would have been any other wiser. Usually you don't get that sort of information so far in advance. I think that was the problem. I think that if there's any chance like this, then just don't have to release quite so much detail and don't be so open in what you're saying beforehand. That's all. I think that would probably be wiser.
Hugo, does it give you any peace that we did see Catherine's mother smiling, having a great day? We saw Prince William on Thursday with Kate Blanchett. I look at engagements like that, and I think, I know I hate to go here so soon, but that could be Harry and Meghan, and I mean, Prince William standing there with movie stars, King Charles, I think it was last week, with surrounded by all of these movie stars. What a missed opportunity. Meghan Markle's doing these D-list podcasts talking about trying to justify her twerking videos. But I digress. I went off on a tangent there. Does it give you any peace of mind that we're still seeing Prince William, who looks like he's in good spirits, and Catherine's mother, who looks like she's in good spirits?
Yes, because obviously one of the possible concerns might have been that there was a crisis, and there quite clearly wasn't a crisis as such. And I think that the nicest thing that we can hope for is that we will see Catherine out and about again in a few days' time, and then we'll know that she's all right, and then it'll all pass by, and everybody will be happy.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. That does bring me a lot of peace to hear you say that. So I went here prematurely, but now we're officially going to go here. Hugo, I know you listen to the podcast. Let me ask Robert Jobson, did you have a chance to listen to Meghan Markle's latest podcast interview where she's the guest, which I think is the position she prefers to be in? And if so, how many times did you almost lose your lunch?
Yeah, I listened to what she said, and it's her perfect position. She's talking about herself. That's what she likes to do. I thought the whole twerking thing was so excruciating to keep banging on about it. It was just terrible. I don't really fully understand it. Even now, I thought it was a hoax when I first saw it.
Yeah.
What on earth was she doing? I mean, you're if that's a major moment in your life. You're about to have a child, and you're behaving like you're about three. I just thought the whole thing was just, but then to put it out there when you've been going on about privacy so much, and then to bang on about it so much afterwards, which, it wasn't a great highlight in your life. It really was a bit of a low point. I know lots of people um, had lots of clicks, probably because they probably thought, what on earth is this?
Yes, we all thought it
And,
was fake. We had to go
yeah,
directly to the source to confirm
so
that it was true.
excruciating, but then to bang on about it as if it was such a great achievement. Look at what she could have been achieving, and in terms of actually making a difference in the world, she could have been working very hard for the Commonwealth with her husband, who I think was a very good. I hate the term working role. I mean, but he was very good out there as a public figure and interacting with the young people. He was fun, and he was well liked. He was extremely popular in terms of being a member of the royal family and contributing to the royal family actually. And then it all went wrong for these sort of pathetic sort of moments of self publicity that are cheap and don't actually mean anything. I mean, if they were both still working for the family or the firm and working out there in the Commonwealth, they could have been making a big difference to kids with literacy problems in Africa or in girls that need help in the Far East. They could have been making such a good difference in terms of the way we discuss diversity. No, she's talking about herself and doing a pathetic, childish twerk thing that really doesn't mean anything, doesn't contribute one iota to the world, really.
Hugo, Robert's right. There's just a complete lack of substance, it feels like, in everything she does lately and says. But one thing that really annoyed me was this claim that her children sometimes set up a booth at a local farmer's market and sell fresh produce from their garden. I mean, obviously, a lot goes into securing a booth at a Santa Barbara / Montecito farmers market. This is not something you could just do on a whim. And knowing how high profile these two are, or this family in general, what is the likelihood that that story is true? Because I just felt my BS meter was blaring when she started talking about this.
So you're suggesting that she's not dwelling in the temple of truth. I would rather go along with that, actually. I mean, I felt, I mean, I did fall asleep to begin with, and thank you very much for making me watch an hour and a half of this stuff. Emma Gride herself was rather interesting. I thought I hadn't heard of her before, and I suppose she went to go into this program in order that people like me who hadn't heard of her would now know about her, because she's obviously a very impressive person. But I mean, I thought it was a bit as if I suddenly told you about my toothbrush and how much I respect my toothbrush and the process of wielding it when I brush my teeth. And then when I take the tube, that I squeeze it and I feel perhaps the essence of goodness and life, and perhaps that responds some way to, my connectivity to the world. And what I'm really trying to say to you, I think it was all psychobabble.
Yeah, no, that is that's a great way
Well,
to
I mean,
put it.
maybe they do. Maybe they do. They go down to the market and they've done this. They wrap like their potatoes in little pink bows and put petals over it, and all of these things that can happen. Look, it's the sort of thing that they probably would do, because it's another stunt.
I actually do think that that is good marketing research to quietly under the radar take whatever products you're trying to just introduce to the world, because you are such a high profile individual. You could do some quiet
Yeah,
market research at a farmer's market, but that's not what she did. She unleashed these products on the internet, and the feedback wasn't great in general. So I thought, well, that's actually how you should have started, instead of just saying that that's what you would have done or wanted to do, or that's what you sometimes quietly do with your kids, which I don't believe. Robert Jobson.
yeah. I mean, it's another gimmick. I mean, as Hugo's saying, I mean, the reality with this woman, there's a distinct lack of substance in what's going on here. She seems to flit between one sort of fabricated story to another. She you very rarely believe what you're being told. Well, I don't from camp Sussex. I mean, they've just appointed a new guy in the UK as their PR, who I actually respect. So I just wonder what's going to happen with the way that they advise them, and they if they're going to listen to them. With a bit of luck, they might, because they really do need to actually, at this stage, if they are going to try and improve their brand, listen to some professionals and start on actually just be talking for the temple of truth. And if they've got nothing to say, don't say anything. And what they've got to say it properly and market themselves as in that way. Because otherwise, people are just going to become constantly saying what a load of baloney they talk, which is frankly what the position they're in America, and they're in the UK. They're not, as a brand, and particularly Meghan, believed at all anymore. People just don't think it's almost. I mean, they have to do these dramatic, twerking, nonsensical things to get any publicity whatsoever, and that's really desperate, I think.
It's so desperate. Okay, so Hugo, Megan says in the interview she's proudest of investing in herself. It's been so many years since we came over here. She said, referencing her move to California, I do think it takes a little bit of courage to bet on yourself. And that felt really good. It's easy to bet on yourself when people are there lining up to work with you because of your proximity to the British royal family. Am I being cynical when I say that, Hugo?
No, not at all. I mean, the short answer is that, I've said this many times before, we wouldn't take the slightest interest in her at all if she wasn't married to Prince Harry. And the Prince Harry connection gives it a sort of soap opera quality, which seems to appeal to people. And the other thing she said, which was rather interesting, was that that you win by failing. Well, she must be doing a lot of winning at the moment, don't you think?
She did say that, but
She did. Apparently, you win by failing, and because you learn. I mean, what she was trying to say, I guess, was out of failure, you learn how not to fail next time. But then she fails again, so she's doing an enormous amount of winning. And then she also talked about how if you persevere to the very end, she was talking about how proud her 15-year-old self would be to see herself as she is now. Well, goodness me, I wonder what her 15-year-old self was like.
Yeah, what were the goals when you were 15 years old? So the reason I kind of stuttered when you said that is because she contradicts herself, because there's another moment within the podcast where the host asks if she could do anything differently, or what would she do if she could go back in time to change her public image, or something similar to that. And Megan says, I would ask people to tell the truth. Well, my argument is what you just quoted, talking about how failing, it teaches you what you need to know. That's where I would have said that. When the host asks, what would you do differently if you could go back in time? I would have said, absolutely nothing. I am where I am today because of mistakes that I made. And I'm proud, or, I'm happy to be here because this is exactly where I'm supposed to be, something vague like that. But Hugo, how are we not supposed to interpret what she says about the truth as a dig at the British royal family?
Oh, well, I was going to say she ought to be jolly careful to ask us to tell the truth about her, because if we tell the truth about her, and actually Robert and I and others do that quite often, and I don't think she likes it very much. I mean, the truth about her is not very pleasant. I don't think she was particularly digging at the royal family. I think they've learnt that that has been a rather a known goal. But yeah, I mean, we must obviously have our radar out for that whenever it happens, because it could happen again. But that's what I think. She should be
Mm.
careful about asking for the truth to be told about her, because it won't be very pleasant.
Robert, to Hugo's point, do you suspect if it wasn't a dig at the royal family, it's a dig at the media?
Oh, it's a dig at the media, but the media really has been pretty straight down the line. I was on those trips with when she was in Tonga and wherever the places we went, and it was all a big act. I think that if she had looked back, and she must look back, both of them must look back and realize they made a terrible mistake. A little bit of humility, if they'd listened, and showed that great strength that her late Majesty Elizabeth II always had, which was patience. I think they would have been fine. I think they would have been embraced by the system. I think the system would have found a place for them. Um, but they didn't listen to Her Majesty, this great, wise, experienced lady who'd seen it all, and would have advised, which was patience, and everything will come to them in time. And if they just listen and learn and adapt, that they would have been in a very good position at this moment. If she would imagine her and Harry, if no Kate didn't turn up at Royal Ascot, imagine if she wants people to be looking at her, they'd have all been looking at her at Royal Ascot or and at Harry at the Garter ceremony. They would have been integral parts of these celebrations, and yet they decided that they wanted to monetarize the royal family as well as being half in and half out, which Her late Majesty was absolutely right in saying, no, that's not how it works. And I think if they wanted that fame, they had it in the palm of their hand. But clearly, all they wanted was money, and as well as the fame. And if they'd just shown a little bit of humility, I think most people would have been very accepting of them.
I agree. I don't think Prince Harry wants the fame, which is why I do sympathize with him sometimes. Speaking of which, though, Hugo, about the twerking video and social media, where we're seeing more of Prince Harry, we're seeing more of the kids. Megan said, it feels liberating. It was a great way for me to get my voice back. It's my space and my channel for joy. That is the intention of my channel. Where has her voice been? They've not been working members of the British royal family for 5 years now, Hugo. Where has it been?
Well, it's been talking about herself, and Robert's promoting herself. And that's the big difference. Robert sort of hit the nail on the head when he said the contribution they could have made in the Commonwealth. That is putting things into life, and instead of taking things out of life. And that's what they're doing now. That's why it's eventually not going to work. Simple as that.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, Hugo. I mean, the reality I feel very sad about actually is the Invictus Games, which Harry did brilliantly in terms of getting going, and I think he did a terrific job. But what he didn't realise is that, of course, this unfortunately is not going to really go on much longer. I don't think in long term, because everywhere they went, the governments of the countries we were hosting would put in a lot of money because of the connection, being a realm or being connected to the royal family and the British royal family, who, of course, with the king being and the late queen being, the commander in chief. So that was a bad misjudgment. And I think if only Harry and Meghan had listened to the late queen and, of course, to King Charles, he was trying to explain this all to them when they were off on their journey. I mean, I think that it was such a shame and such a missed opportunity. That's all. And at the moment, we are, in terms of the media, and the media does love to be involved in the with all the royal stories. They would have had a very central, if they wanted the publicity, if she wanted that publicity, she would have had a very central role to play, and it would have been helpful for, I think, Catherine and William to share some of that load. And I think that's probably why William is a little bit, more than a little bit, disgruntled, because he knows that the whole of the media expectation is on him and his family.
That's a very good point. All right, Hugo, an insider, according to the Daily Mail, says that the real reason Prince Harry is suddenly happy to see his children's faces shared online is a desperate one. Harry is completely heartbroken, they claim. His dad refuses to see him or the kids, not even on Zoom. It's the last resort. He's desperately hoping the king might see a picture of Archie or Lilibet and realize what he's missing. They say that Prince Harry's tried everything, calls, letters, but nothing's worked. This is his way of saying, look at what you're missing. I find that an incredibly bizarre strategy, Hugo. I feel like this is more of a way for them to grab headlines, to help for their commercial ventures over any sort of strategy for reconciliation. When it comes to the family, it feels like they're incredibly private when it comes to this issue, and throwing anything out there like that BBC interview is just going to set them back. Can you react to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that first of all, we don't know what the king thinks about communicating with Harry, because he's been very clever, and he's actually hasn't responded at all in public. I mean, I would imagine that he was perfectly willing to talk to him if, Prince Harry wasn't sort of always, I don't know, either whinging or asking for money or causing trouble or upsetting him and all the sort of things that he might be doing. I think my theory is that the king has been very clever and left the door wide open to him. But we've had a lot of stuff from Prince Harry saying that he wants the royal family to apologize to him. Well, he's the one who should be apologizing to them. And if he wants reconciliation, you don't do that in public by saying sending a photograph and hope he sees it. You send him a photograph privately. Goodness way, he knows how to do that. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous, the whole thing. So I don't take that insider story very seriously. The insider probably comes from the Harry camp.
Very, very, that's good intel. Robert, do you have a reaction to what Hugo said?
Yeah, I mean, Hugo's exactly right. But the reality here is the king. The big problem is trust. The king cannot trust Harry. If you're doing a Zoom call, who would be recording the Zoom call? And let's be honest. Everything that's been said, everything that's been done in the last 5-6 years, has come out in the public domain, and the king cannot possibly trust Harry to either stop asking for money or to just stop leaking stories. That's exactly what he's been doing for the last 6 years. As to the grandchildren, I think that ship's flown, really. I think that unfortunately they decided to go to Los Angeles to live there, and that meant that there was always going to be a distance between grandfather and the grandchildren. He hasn't had a chance at all to build a relationship with the Sussex children. They're practically strangers, really, and that is a sadness of what's happened here. But it was a conscious decision by the Sussexes to do that. They've got a grandfather on that side of the pond as well, and they don't see him. Well, there we have the common denominator is that she doesn't even, they don't even have a relationship with Megan's father. So you've got to say what's going on here. It's them that have decided that that's the case, nobody else, and it's certainly not the king's fault.
Well, agree with us, disagree with us, let us know in the comments below. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video with a friend. Hugo Vickers and Robert Jobson, so fun to pick both of your brains today. Thank you so much for your wonderful insight. And it was a very busy royal week, so we had plenty of stories to go over, and I really appreciate your time.